Welcome, everybody, to the newest episode of Relationships Today. I am your host, Kevin Kishor, author of Chocolate Covered Frenchfries. And my publicist told me I'm supposed to show you guys the book when recording these things, and I don't have one in my hand, so I will post a picture of it. Don't worry, and then if you click the links, you can always find it. Electronic books, ebooks, and paperbacks as well, and the YouTube channel, of course, and all that fun stuff are in the links. I'm excited to have my good friend Chantel on today. Let her introduce herself, but she is also a coach similar to me, but I find she specializes, I would say, in intimacy. Is that what you would say, Chantel? Tell us a little bit about you.
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me on today. I know we've been planning this for a while, so it's nice that we get to do it. I kind of focus a lot on intimacy and connection within relationships themselves, partnered relationships.
Okay.
It's been an evolution, as you know, but that's my favorite place to be.
Yeah. Intimacy, I think, is most of our favorite places to be. I would hope. We're talking about relationships. Well, that's the goal anyway, right? Is real intimacy.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Chantel also specializes in the pleasure side of intimacy, but today we're not going to get into that since it's our first podcast together, and we'll be doing much more. Our lives seem to be continually meeting up, so you'll see and hear her again for sure. So Chantal, what's the name of your business?
So my business is Wild Love Co. So that's my Instagram as well, is at Wild Love Co _ because love in all its forms, and wild, because I never really liked fitting into the norm. I like to be a little bit outside the box and just kind of do things differently. So yeah, That's where you can find me on Instagram.
At Wild Love Co _
Mm-hmm.
All right. I told Chantal I was going to do my best to speak a little louder today because my cousin was listening to the podcast. And shout out to my cousin Mikey in Ontario, Canada. He said sometimes it's hard to hear me because I have a low voice. So to all my listeners out there, I'm going to do my best to speak a little louder. I asked Chantal today if we could talk a little bit about shame. I guess guilt would be connected to that maybe too. Would you put those two together?
Yeah, they definitely intertwine with each other. Sorry, I totally thought Savannah was going to come in. They definitely intertwine together. By the way. For sure. Yes, my daughter. I have the door closed, but the children, that doesn't mean anything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely intertwined for sure.
Guilt and shame. Yes. Yeah. And so do you think, because I brought up this topic today because in some of our conversations, you said that that's probably one of the most common things that come up with people that you're coaching.
Yes.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. Shame is such a huge thing with my clients, with people who reach out to me. It's the one thing that when I post about it, it's one of the most interactive one, because it's, when we step outside of what we are taught to be and do, then we get shame, right? Shame comes from not being what other people, whether it's our family or our partners or our friends or the world, think we should be. So, it's just, we feel shame when we're not living up to specifics that are given to us, but they don't, these specifics, it's like there's a metaphor of this: you're given this garden, this soil and this garden when you're born. You're taught beliefs, you're taught rules, and you grow up with those things, but maybe your soil does better with a different kind of plant or flower. than what you were given, right? And so when we can understand that, you know, what grows in our own soil is different than you or anybody else, then we can kind of eliminate some of the shame. But it stops people from growing, from doing the things that they want to do, or from having the relationships that they want to have.
Okay. And just so everybody knows, like, we are purposely keeping some things pretty vague in these conversations, because when we're dealing with intimacy and things like shame, of course, we could get into details, but because of maybe some of our listeners or some of the platforms that we're on, we're trying to just keep it pretty, on the surface. So kind of roll with us and try to read between the lines is what we're asking you. And if you have questions or you want to dig deeper, I mean, we will do more podcasts. Encourage you to message us, either of us, right? And we can talk more about it, and we can talk amongst ourselves about it and present new material as well.
Right.
So would you say, okay, go on, finish.
I was just going to say, but, shame isn't just, about what you do with a partner. Shame affects relationships when it has nothing to do with intimacy, right? So I want people to understand that shame is not just saved for intimate relationships and what happens in bedrooms or preferences or whatever the case may be, right? Shame impacts our relationships in so many different levels, and that's also part of us not going deep into one thing and being able to kind of focus a little later on.
Yeah, for sure. I see your little doggy came in there.
Yeah. Just leave her and close the door.
So would you say that shame is, like, in your experience with working with clients, would you say it's equally impactful for men and women?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah. But in different ways.
Okay.
Right. So, what I hear a lot from men in feeling shame is not living up to a societal standard of what it means to be a man. Okay. Right. And, being tough and emotionless, or bearing everything on your own, without being allowed to kind of be vulnerable and be soft when it comes to your partner and your relationships. And then women on the other side is just, it's so much of being this like image of perfection in society, but then also being able to be the perfect mom and the perfect partner. And as we change the dynamics in society of women working, there's more pressure in that sense as well, right? Of what a woman looks like. So it's on both sides, but for different things.
So for women, you'd say maybe it's more physical, and for men, it's more emotional, the shame that we experience?
I think, yeah, as a woman, you receive these messages from media that, you need to have this perfect body and be this perfect image of something specific that is really not real anymore, because Photoshop, like, really, it's
Snapchat.
It's just yeah, but that's exactly it, right? There's filters, and women are going to plastic surgeons and showing them pictures of themselves with filters and saying, I want to look like this. Right? It's this like perfection standard that the beauty industry has created, and I've been in the beauty industry, so I know what it's like. And then also, right, like, have kids, but still maintain this really perfect body that your partner is going to want to come home to and not stray from, but then also, like, be independent and, have a job, or be the perfect mom while maintaining all of these things. It's a lot on our shoulders. Yeah,
I can imagine. I'm particularly interested in that, obviously, because I have daughters, and so as a dad, but I just think it's good for us men to know too the female experience. That's why I like to have female guests on as much as possible, because obviously I have the guy's perspective. Although I don't think I'm a typical guy. Just saying, some of my friends would probably vouch for that. But
Yeah.
the shame side of it, though, like for men, from a man's perspective, I definitely understand. I think what I hear you saying is, like, I'm a guy that I think, obviously I write about relationships and stuff, so I'm in touch with my feelings for the
Yeah.
most part, and that I do well with that. But what I hear is that a lot of men, and I know a lot of men, and I think it impacts mental health. I'm seeing a lot about that
Yeah.
lately for men, is that like burying these things or not feeling comfortable or feeling ashamed to process anything is what's leading to these problems. Is that your experience too?
Yeah. And a lot of men saying, like, I don't actually want to be like this stereotypical, the unhealthy or toxic masculinity. Like, that's actually not who I am. And I feel like I have to be that, but that's not who I am. I want to be, I want to be able to be close with my partner and vulnerable. And I don't, like, I'm not this like porn image ideal mentality, right? Like, a lot of men don't actually think that way. They actually really want the deep connection with their partner, but it's not cool, or they think that nobody else wants that, is what I hear a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure the media has a lot to do with that. I think it's also helpful, like, so this whole like man woman thing is helpful for the other gender to help the other gender with, right?
Yeah.
Like, as a man, we get mixed messages from women. I would say that it's that whole like, oh, I want a sensitive man or whatever. Like, the sensitive has been kind of coined as a negative thing now, a guy who's in touch with his emotions. But at the same time, they're like, oh, I don't want that. I don't want a soft man. I want a man that, is like rugged and blah, 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 like the stereotypical type thing. So men were like, well, what is it? What do you want? Like, or affirm us when we are, in touch with our whatever, our emotional side. And I think for women too, same thing, right? Like, you're looking for us to be like, okay, well, you don't have to be this perfect thing, but in order for us to do that, in order for us to affirm you in that, it's also action based, right? Like, we can't be like, oh, you don't have to be perfect, but we're gonna go sleep around, because and I know that's a whole nother issue, like, all that. Like,
I do really think it's important that we give the tools for both sides to be able to handle the things that we say we're wanting, right? So women saying, like, we want a man who's able to share his feelings, but then we don't know how to handle it when they do, right? So teaching proper tools and communication and being able to hold space for each other when we actually give the things that we're asking for, right?
Right.
That's something I experienced in the past where, like, I wanted to have more of that from a male partner, but then when it did happen, I freaked out because I didn't know how to handle it. Right? It's like, no, it's not something that you do experience often. So it can be a little bit confusing, and being able to kind of be honest about the feelings and the stereotypical messages that come up when it happens, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay, I'm not used to this. I don't know how to handle this.
Like,
be kind with yourself.
I started crying, and then you're like, oh no, he's crying. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Like, no, just
right. But that right. And then I also think it's really important to talk about having a balance on both sides between, and a lot of people get like upset about masculine, feminine. So I often talk about it in the way of agency and communion. So agency is more the masculine energy, communion's more the feminine energy. And both men and women need to have a balance of that. And then with each other.
Communion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so communion's more your feminine. Like right. we all have both, right? Masculinity is more like, agency is more, business. Right now, I'm in my agency right now because I'm doing work. Or, like, communion is like caring for your family,
right?
A member that's sick, or your partner's sick, or cooking a meal, right? It's a balancing both on both sides. So being able to say, oh, like, we both have both feminine and masculine energies within us, or, you know, agency and communion that we balance between. But if we're too far on one side is when we struggle.
Interesting. That came up in like a couple podcasts back with different guests. We were talking about masculine, feminine energy. So it keeps coming up a lot. So I think this is going to be a theme probably for 2021. We're going to be talking about the balance.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? It's like, it's something that I've been talking about for a little while, but I talk more, like I said, agency and communion, because I don't, you know, people get really kind of weird about masculine, feminine because of the way that the world is right now. But it's not meant in a, like, you know, male, female. It's not that at all, right? It's just naturally what we have. And we're so pushy on men to be so masculine and then not enough feminine, so they don't know how to deal with that energy.
Yeah.
And then female, so heavy in feminine energy that we don't know how to kind of balance out a little.
It's interesting. Often when I used to teach about it, it was in the context of initiation, like initiator versus receiver. And because, you know, and like I said, we're not going to talk about that today, but when we're talking about reproduction, it's the man is the initiator and the woman is the receiver, right? In that sense. And it kind of is a metaphor for our energies too, in a lot of ways. And it tends to be always applied to like business or caregiving, but you know, like in that sense. So there's different ways. I was reading about a little bit about spirituality this week too, because my next book is going to be on love and spirituality. And they were talking about finding the balance between, within us we always have the sort of God or power, whichever word you want to use, of chaos, and the God or power of order. And this is kind of some of this same theme of finding that balance between these two forces, like fire and water or whatever, like in that sense. So it's super cool. It's cool that is common. I actually think it's a good thing that I'm hearing this from other people that are, you know, maybe there's an awakening, kind of get woke, people. Time to get woke.
Well, right. I used to, and I heard this a couple years ago, the masculine thing, and it was a light bulb moment for me, because I really realized I was heavy in my masculine energy for a really long time, and this was due to my own, you know, childhood and experiences that I had to be in order to survive. But then I struggled in partnerships because I didn't know how to balance out with my feminine, right? And once I really understood that I needed to have the balance and that I could kind of give in more into the feminine, then I found more balance in my friendships, my life, in all ways, really. So
yeah, for sure. I can see that. I can see the evolution in you, like from the time I've known you, like, and knowing your background a little bit. Like, definitely, it allows us to operate the way we do, and it's great. Yeah. So, recapping, because we're like winding down already. Our 20 minutes always goes super fast. That's why I said we're going to do more podcasts. I would say, so we started talking about shame and guilt being intertwined. So the message I want to send, especially to the fellas, is be yourself. Don't be ashamed. But ladies too, we all need to find the tools so that we can find the balance and we can work with our partners. But it always comes down to doing the self-work first, right?
Yes.
Any final words from you, Chantel?
No, I think that's a great thing to say. It all, you know, starts with self-work and making sure that you're healthy and good inside so that you can do that with your partner. Yeah.
So shame holds us back, and we need to stop that. We need to find a way to get in touch with it and be able to move past it in order to have healthy relationships, both men and women. So like I said before, you can find us both on Instagram. If you're watching this on YouTube, there are links as well. Links everywhere. We always got links in our bios and in our descriptions. Check out my book, Chocolate Covered Frenchfries, and pass it on. Share the podcast, please. Relationships Today. Subscribe. check out Chantel. We're both available for private or one-on-one coaching. We've got some new things coming up for 2021, both of us in that department. So watch out for it. And please practice good relationships, people. That's the goal. There you go. So I want to thank you for coming on today, Chantel.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And
Finally.
we're going to end the podcast there. Thank you all for listening, and hope you have a great week wherever you are. Peace and love.
Bye, everyone.